Welcome to NEK VT Rocks. My guest today is Faye Tolar, who is a Yin Yoga instructor. What's Yin Yoga?
Well, I guess I would start with the term yin. So most of us have heard of Yin and Young, which are two ends of a spectrum. So they're forces at two ends of a spectrum. So Yin is dark, where Yang is bright. Yin is cold, where Yang is hot. Yin is passive, where Yang is active. So Yin Yoga has those Yin characteristics. Most people are most familiar with Yang types of yoga, where the muscles are engaged strongly and repetitively to strengthen the muscle cells.
Right.
Yin is at the other end of the spectrum, is a more passive form of yoga. And let me just say, both ends of the spectrum are important. Together, they kind of create a harmony. So I'm not here to say yin is better than yang. It's the other end, and we really need some of both in our lives, yin and yang. So yin is more passive, and it's directed at different tissues. It's directed at the deeper connective tissues, which include your ligaments, your tendons, your joints, and your fascia. Now, fascia is a connective tissue, and it's kind of like a shrink-wrapped bodysuit that covers every organ, bone, muscle in our body. So it's a covering of all of our organs. And that tissue is very stiff. And it's prone to contracture. So if we don't stress that tissue, activate that tissue, then it shrinks even more and gets even stiffer. And it limits our mobility.
Welcome to aging.
Yes, aging, but also if you've had inflammation in the joints, that can cause the tissues to contract, and then just not using those tissues.
Right.
So those tissues do need to get stressed.
So this is a more focused kind of yoga.
It is
rather than
focused.
Flowing through umpteen different postures, which is one of the things that very often alienates some of us from a regular yoga practice, because we feel like idiots trying to do things we can't do.
It is slow and more passive. Some of the poses are exactly the same poses you might do in a more active yoga class, but we're going to be directing a mild stress to these deeper tissues. And then we're going to hold that pose for time.
Okay.
So we get into a pose, and like you say, we don't flow quickly from one pose to another. We get into a pose, attempt to apply a mild to moderate stress to a certain target area, and then we hold that for about 3 to 5 minutes. And the thought is it was going to help us regain both space and strength in those deeper connective tissues.
It sounds like a sort of kinder, gentler.
It is gentle.
Exercise.
Yes, it is a gentle
There's no
form.
risk of getting injured doing this.
Certainly not if you're doing it the way I do find sometimes when new students come in, they're so used to active forms that they press too hard. Where we tell students, you want to feel mild to moderate sensations.
Right.
And if it starts to be painful, you need to back off. So if you did press into a more painful pose, you could do damage to these tissues.
So for somebody who's older or who's rehabbing from an injury, it sounds ideal.
It's definitely, we talk about older, but our tissues, these tissues actually start to contract, I'd say, in our 30s. So it isn't like you can't start yin yoga at a much younger age, and if nothing else, you're going to be maintaining the more flexibility you have in youth. But as you age, those tissues do contract more and more,
Right.
particularly because we tend to sit in certain positions all day long. Whether
Terrible positions.
Yeah, we're at a
right?
desk and we're hunched over a computer all day.
Or we're sitting in these horrendous chairs.
Yes. And we sit, even at home, we sit on a sofa.
Slumped.
And we slump, and we can lose the normal curvature in our spine.
Right.
And then the tissues contract and hold us in that position. And over time, we almost get reformed into positions that don't allow us the mobility that we seek in yoga.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. How soon do people see results? I mean, part of, I think, what holds people back from participating in many of the forms of yoga is, they've heard all of the theories and the questions about how wonderful it is, how it's restorative, how it's great for all of your systems spiritually as well as physically. And they start, and it's hard. It's not easy. It's not relaxing, and they quit. So for somebody who's starting, say, older, or recovering from an injury with some, say, contractures around a shoulder, how soon do they begin to notice that there actually is something to this?
Well, I wish I could say it's a silver bullet, but it's not.
Oh, come on.
It's a slow process. I do think after a practice, you feel that you've opened things up, and you feel lighter, and just you feel like you move easier. But I do believe it's something that, the more you practice, the better you are going to feel. The thing is you can start anywhere, because unlike young forms of yoga where you're trying to emulate the instructor,
right,
we emphasize that it's not about looking any certain way. It's about getting the sensations in your tissues. So you may often look very different than what the instructor looks like.
Sure.
So we have a saying, if you're feeling it, you're doing it. So it's about stressing your tissue and feeling the sensations as you do a pose. And we have many modifications, and we use a lot of supports, props, to help us stress our own tissue in a way, in a comfortable way.
So you're using things like blocks and pillows and ropes and pulleys and
bolsters, straps, blocks. But keep in mind, if you're doing this at home, you can use cushions from the sofa. You can use a book instead of a block. So you don't have to rush out and buy any equipment.
You don't even really need a mat.
You really don't. In fact, I have a hardwood floor, so I have a mat, but then I cover it with a blanket. So if you have a, carpeted floor, just a blanket or two is fine to lay down and use for support.
Where do you teach this?
So I trained to be a yin yoga instructor during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. So
you picked your time.
Yeah, it was kind of nice because I was traveling to classes being offered by Josh Summers, who's one of the experts in yin yoga. And I was traveling, to New Hampshire and Maine. And then the pandemic hit, and they put all their classes online. So that was kind of nice. But I completed my instruction last December. And then I started working at the Wellness Center here in Newport in August. And there are openings. There's openings in a lot of classes at the Wellness Center.
People are just coming back into getting back in touch with their bodies again.
So Mary Hoadley is the director at the Wellness Center, and her number is 334-5566.
That's an easy one.
Yes, thank goodness. And give her a call if you're interested in yin yoga. I present my class Tuesday mornings at 9 o'clock. But there's also more active forms of yoga
Yeah.
and other types of exercise programs.
Yeah. And I presume you're more than open to teaching this elsewhere and in other places.
I am. I prefer to be at a center where classes are being offered and they have the props and the supplies that we need.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds as though your class in particular would be a great adjunct to, say, some physical therapy places.
It is. I mean, I'm certainly not a physical therapist, so I don't have the knowledge of, if somebody is just injured and how to progress from that injury. But once they've gotten through their physical therapy, to kind of continue the maintenance of keeping the tissues that they've probably stressed and exercised during their recovery, they can keep that going with yin yoga.
A lot of people apparently get a little weirded out by the word yoga. And some of the groups that I've heard recently get too concerned or very concerned about the spiritual piece of it. That doesn't sound as though that's something that gets emphasized at all in your work.
I guess it depends on what you mean by spiritual. There is a meditative component to it, because as we hold these poses for 3 to 5 minutes, we encourage the students to stay in the moment, which is a form of meditation.
Right.
So, from that alone, I think a lot is gained. We take that off the mat, that ability to stay focused and in the moment.
Right.
When we're doing yin, we emphasize focusing just on the breath.
Right.
And our minds will wander, and then we just say, just very gently bring yourself back to focusing on your breath. So it is a meditative practice, but it's not forced in any way, shape, or form.
Sounds like it would be great to do with kids.
That would be fun. Kids, of course, they're all already so flexible.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking so much from that point, but the sort of relaxed meditative piece.
Yeah, the meditative form. Yeah, kids do have a hard time, although they say that children are more focused than adults, that when they're doing something, they're doing that alone. They're immersed into it. So I think, they have it all. They're flexible and they're focused.
And then somehow we work at screwing it up.
Yes.
How do we do that?
I don't know, but we do.
We do. And we've all done it with our bodies too.
Absolutely. I can remember being in my late 30s, and I worked as a respiratory therapist, and I remember one day I had to reach back behind the ventilator to plug it in, and I just felt like I'd torn, the tissues in my arm, and it's like, what is that? And it was just the fact that I'm not stretching.
Right.
And things are contracting. You just contract in the positions that you do all day long.
Yeah. I do a regular form of exercise. And one of the things is you do something on one side and then you turn to the other side on the floor, on the mat. But it's roll onto your back and roll over. Yeah. Well, 30 years ago, that was really easy. I never thought you'd just roll. But it doesn't work like that anymore.
No, we really do
you have
lose
to
mobility.
Somehow reposition and do it slowly, as opposed to the quick flip.
Yeah, one of the poses that we do is called Sphinx, and it's on our stomachs. And I know for a long time I never laid on my stomach anymore. And now I am starting to get more comfortable laying on my stomach, and it's just because I'm opening up space in those tissues.
Right, that's a hard one because you're pushing up and sort of keeping your hips on the ground.
Yeah, but again, it's yin, so we're never pushing, we're never forcing. We're either just resting on our forearms, or if you want to go deeper, you can, put some props under your forearms to help bend your back a little bit more. But we're trying not to engage muscles.
Yeah.
Just the opposite. The second principle is to relax your muscles. You find your edge, find those sensations, and then you relax the muscles.
It's really cool. We're going to, for those who are curious right now, do this interview a little differently because we've spent a bunch of time talking, and we're going to switch into doing something on the mat with a willing volunteer who will either be Todd or Terry. I think they were drawing straws to see which it is.
So Todd, we're going to do a pose known as caterpillar. And our target is going to be the back of our legs and our lower spine.
Okay.
All we're going to do is, like you're sitting with your legs stretched out, and then you're going to roll forward. So you want your back a little bit rounded, and then you can just rest your hands on your legs.
I can't go forward as far as
Okay. What's stopping you?
this.
Okay, that's good. What can stop us can be our soft tissue. It can be just too much tension, maybe in the back of your legs. So
It's definitely in the back of the legs and
you're feeling it in your back.
a little bit.
Well, that's kind of your target area, is to feel it in your back. So there are 4 principles here. You come forward until you get stopped.
Yep.
And one of those things will stop you, whether it be too much tension in your back. And that's what we really want. We want to get some sensations in the lower spine, a rounding of the lower spine. It can also, like I said, be tension in the back of the legs, or it can just simply be the soft tissue that stops you. So, indeed, you may, if you're not getting any sensations in those target areas, you may need to find an alternative position for you.
I do, but I also have it in here too. So it's kind of on the bottom of the leg.
Okay, well, we have that saying in Yin Yoga, if you're feeling it, you're doing it.
Okay.
So, and you can use props, so if it's not comfortable to just have your hands down, you can, like put a bolster and just lean over the bolster. I don't know if you want to see if that helps.
I don't know.
But
Maybe.
the idea is, because you want to be comfortable. You want to feel those sensations in the target area.
Yep.
This is finding your edge. So you're coming as far forward as you can, and we're looking for mild to moderate sensations in the target area.
Okay.
And then once you find that edge, the second principle is to just relax into it. Relax all the muscles around that target area. So you want to relax your legs, relax your hips. The third principle is we're going to hold for time.
Okay.
And typically we would be holding this pose for 3 to 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's what this deeper connective tissue needs. It's a more passive movement, but it needs time to have an effect.
So it's getting the oxygen circulating through and...
Well, there is something to that. They talk about the chi flow in our body.
Yep.
And that when we stress an area, particularly, we're stimulating the tissue in that area. That once we come out of it, the energy flow in our body just rushes to that area. So there is a Chinese medicine component to Yin Yoga.
I like it.
And then while we're holding for time, we also instruct our students to try to stay focused on the breath, breathing in to the sensations, relaxing on the exhale. And that becomes a meditative practice as well.
Sure. That's cool.
Right.
I like this pillow.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Yin is comforting in that way. We always have lots of props, and we're always relaxing. Yeah. We are feeling sensations, so there is, it's not just restorative. It is some stress that we're placing on tissue. So it can take a while to get comfortable holding poses. For 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
And how often would this happen? How often would Todd or whoever else, if they're serious about recovering body function, how
well,
often
I would say at minimum, 3 times a week. I mean, I practice yin yoga every day, and it's, to me, we eat every day. We eat 3 times a day to nourish our body. So, so I personally feel like a daily practice is a good thing, but not everybody has the time for that. So, trying to get around to it. And you could do, 15 minutes of it. You don't have to do a whole hour every day. And particularly focusing on areas of your body where you feel like you have more contraction, more stiffness. Like you were saying, maybe your shoulders.
I was going to say, what would you do for like a forearm and wrist type thing?
One arm, if I can demonstrate this, is you come onto your stomach, and then you stretch out one of your arms, and then you just roll as far as you can towards that arm. And that's going to open that arm out this way, where, as you were saying, as a musician, you're often got your arm
like this a lot,
And all of us that sit over computers tend to hunch our shoulders. So that pose is called open wing, and it opens. So it's very simple, and you can do it in bed if you want. Just,
That sounds good.
Yeah, there you go. Just, stretch it out and lean towards it as much as you can, and then just hold it.
Hold it and focus on breathing?
Focus on breathing. That's simple.
So then you can say, I'm late to work because I'm stretching my wings.
That would be a different excuse to be late for work.
Yeah.
Right. So
I like
that
that.
actually sounds like a really good one.
I'm going to try that. And my girlfriend has, she doesn't have one of these cool pillows, but she's got the mats and she's got the blocks.
She's got the blocks.
She has the blocks,
Right. It always comes in handy to get yourself, your focus, like for your arm, would be focusing the sensations there. But, for the rest of your body, you can use pillows or whatever is needed so that the rest of your body is comfortable.
Yeah. Cool.
Do you want to try the arm one, Todd?
I'm not going to right now, but I will.
Right. Well, thank you for being a wonderful student.
I'm usually on the other side of the camera.
I know. Well, that was fun.
It was. I enjoyed having Todd as a student, and good for him for being willing to do that.
Pressure is amazing. But I'm joking apart. I will ask him every time how his wings are doing. But as somebody who has also trashed both my rotator cuffs because of doing stupid stuff over the years, I'll try that too.
Yeah, otherwise, we tend to protect areas that maybe have been injured, so they do kind of freeze in a certain position.
We adapt, we build ways of being able to do what we need to do without involving that movement, because that movement was painful or impossible.
Right.
So that's sort of a really interesting way of looking at changing it. How much focus for you is on the breath, breathing?
Well, our mind defaults to wandering, and it wanders to planning ahead, and it wanders to reflecting on what's past. So that's just, our mind is very active, and it's constantly doing that. So even for me, I try to focus on the breath, but it's not long before you notice you're planning what you're going to have for lunch, or you're thinking about what happened, yesterday. And we just encourage students to gently bring themselves back, and over time, you do it over and over and over, eventually you can focus for a longer period of time. And it's very calming, and I think with practice on the mat with this meditation, it carries over into our lives.
Sure.
And better focus.
You're both a cyclist and a skier. And presumably over the decades, not wishing to reflect on your age and seniority here, you've done damage to yourself, as have we all, because we've lived in our bodies.
Yeah. Probably the damage I feel the most is from downhill skiing,
right,
and my knees. So my knees can be tender. Knees are not something that we want to stress.
Right.
We can do poses where the knee is completely bent, and then you get that stretch across there.
Yeah.
But if the knee is not completely bent, twisting it in any way can cause damage.
Right.
So as we teach students, we're always reminding them they should never tolerate pain in their knees because they could be doing further damage.
Right. Do you feel that the practice that you've had has helped, not necessarily restore damage that you've already done, but, well, help it in some ways?
I think so. I think otherwise I think my knees would be stiffer if I never did that stretching across the knee.
Right.
Then, again, our muscles tend to protect us, and they lock up,
right,
and then they make it more difficult for the knees to flex, and you'll feel that when you're maybe walking or hiking.
Yeah.
So I would think that yes, it's got to be beneficial to do some stretching of the knees, the ankles, really, all of our parts.
Right. We forget some of the smaller parts, like our feet and our ankles and our hands.
Yeah, wrists.
Wrists.
So sometimes when we're doing a pose, while you're doing one pose, you can also just flex your wrist and, put it on the mat in such a way that you get some flexion into that wrist.
Right.
So, wrists we do use a lot, so they tend not to be as locked up as like our spine, which we tend to hold in one position all the time.
Yeah, and I think the default for spines, certainly for those of us in this culture, is flexion, where we're going forward,
yes,
as opposed to extension,
correct,
where we're going back.
That's correct. And we'll lose that normal curvature of the lumbar spine because we're constantly, like you say, in that flexed position, more of a rounding of our spine. And that loss of that normal curvature has been associated with a lot of lower back pain.
Right. And it interferes with breathing and with all sorts of other things.
Sure, it could. You're right.
And sometimes if I get myself down on a mat, it seems to take forever before my spine straightens out, as opposed to I can feel it's curved on the mat.
Yes.
Very unappealing.
Yeah, it's good to move it in different directions and to stress it in different ways.
And very gently.
Gently, yeah. When I say stress, we're talking mild stress.
Yeah. This is cool. Do you have any videos of this?
Not that I have published, but really the only thing I'm presenting right now is the class at the Wellness Center once a week.
If people were interested in looking on, say, YouTube and put in Yin Yoga, would they come up with any?
Oh, yes. They'd come up with a lot.
Cool. So
I'll drop some names. My favorite teachers that are known in Yin Yoga as the gurus of Yin Yoga include Bernie Clark and Paul Gilly, I think is how you say his last name, and Josh Summers.
Okay.
So you could definitely just type in Yin Yoga, and you're going to get a lot of Yin Yoga classes that you can stream for free.
Yeah, and it's just a way of getting a little more information, and then that very often encourages somebody to take a class.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a whole different way of thinking about your body and regaining body function.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's cool.
I've only been familiar with it a few years myself, even though I've been practicing yoga since I was 20.
Right. I was going to say as long as I've known you, and that's quite a while now.
Yeah, a very long time.
You've been a yoga person. Mm-hmm. But not the brutal. I say brutal deliberately.
Yeah, not hot yoga. And some of them are very strenuous.
Yeah.
Which
It's great.
They're good. They're great for some people. But we're all different.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, the yin, I think yoga, it very much complements any form of active exercise, whether it be walking or skiing or biking. There you're building up muscle. And then going to the yin yoga, you're really focusing on opening up those deeper tissues.
Yeah, which makes so much sense. This is great. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Pam.
And hopefully we'll do something like this again.
Wonderful.
Great. Okay.